The Beat Goes On by Janson Davies. Chapter 1. The Rookie Beat. The police station smelled like burnt coffee, leather polish, and gun oil. Officer Jim Henderson adjusted the stiff collar of his uniform, eyes scanning the cracked linoleum floor as if it might offer clues to his future. Fresh out of academy, he'd expected a desk job or maybe traffic duty. Instead, he was being assigned to Area 10, the city's most volatile beat, where sirens never slept, and backup arrived just in time for your funeral, if at all. Across the briefing room, Officer Meredith Cole leaned against the wall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She had the kind of posture that said she'd seen things, though her personnel file was as blank as his. Another rookie, another mystery. Captain Delaney, a man who looked like he'd been carved from roast beef and asphalt, slapped a folder onto the table. "You two are partners now. Area 10. Night shift. Don't get killed." Jim blinked. "Sir, isn't Area 10 usually reserved for veterans?" "Yeah, but budget cuts and politics mean rookies get thrown into the fire. Consider it a trial by inferno." Meredith didn't flinch. "We'll manage," Delaney grunted. "You'll either learn fast or die faster. The gangs out there don't play. The Red Knives run the East Blocks, Grin Syndicate owns the alleys, and something new's been stirring in the shadows. Something off-book." Jim glanced at Meredith. Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, with something he couldn't place. Recognition, calculation. They were given a beat-up cruiser, a glitchy comms unit, and a map that hadn't been updated since the last mayoral scandal. As they rolled into Area 10, neon graffiti lit the walls like war paint. Drones buzzed overhead. A child in a cracked VR headset watched them pass, chewing gum like it was armor. Jim broke the silence. "So, you always this quiet?" Meredith stared out the window. "Noise doesn't help survival." He chuckled. "Great, I get the stoic philosopher cop. You get someone who knows how to listen." They turned onto Placer Avenue, where the pavement was more crater than road. A call came through. Disturbance near the old subway entrance. Possible gang activity. No backup available. Jim gripped the wheel. "Guess we're jumping in." Meredith checked her sidearm. "Try not to bleed too loudly." As they approached the scene, figures emerged from the shadows, tattooed, armored, grinning with too many teeth. The Red Knives. One of them held a plasma torch, another had a weapon that looked suspiciously alien. Jim felt something stir inside him. A pulse, a memory not his own. Meredith's hand hovered near her belt, not for her gun, but something else, something glowing. The gang closed in, and the beat was about to get very strange. Chapter 2. Powers Revealed. The alley behind the old subway station reeked of ozone and blood. Jim stepped out of the cruiser first, heart pounding like a war drum. The Red Knives had them boxed in, 6 gang members, all armed, all grinning like they'd already carved their names into the rookies' tombstones. Meredith moved beside him, calm as a glacier. Her fingers hovered near her belt, not her firearm, but a small metallic disc pulsing with faint blue light. Jim noticed it too late. The gang leader, a brute named Slink, raised his plasma torch. "You pigs picked the wrong place to eat your donuts." Jim raised his hands. "We're just here to talk." Slink sneered. "Talk's over." The torch flared. Meredith moved. In a blur, she was airborne, gravity forgotten. Her body shimmered, cloaked in a translucent field that bent light and sound. She landed behind the gang, palm outstretched. A pulse of energy erupted from her hand, knocking 2 thugs into the wall with bone-cracking force. Jim froze. His instincts screamed. His skin burned. Something inside him, something buried, awoke. Slink turned toward Meredith, weapon raised. Jim stepped forward, eyes glowing gold. The air around him warped, vibrating with unseen force. He clenched his fists, and the pavement cracked beneath his boots. "Back off," he growled, voice layered with something not quite human. Slink hesitated, then charged. Jim moved faster. In seconds, the gang was down, disarmed, unconscious, or fleeing into the shadows. Meredith landed beside Jim, breathing hard, eyes locked on his. "You're not from Earth," she said. He blinked. "Neither are you." Silence stretched between them, thick with revelation. "I'm from Venus," she said finally. "Lawkeeper class, embedded observer." Jim nodded slowly. "Mars, Enforcement Division. Same mission." They stared at each other, two undercover aliens sent to study human law enforcement, now exposed. "What do we do?" Jim asked. Meredith looked around. "We finish our shift." He laughed, breathless. "Seriously? We're still cops, and this beat still needs cleaning." They dragged the unconscious gang members into a responding transport wagon, filed a report that omitted the impossible, and drove on. Above them, a surveillance drone hovered, blinking red. Someone, or something, was watching. Chapter 3. Partners in Justice. Area 10 didn't change overnight, but the rookies did. Jim and Meredith returned to the station with bruises, a half-written report, and a silent pact. Their covers were blown, but not to anyone who mattered. Not yet. They filed the incident as gang dispersal via non-lethal tactics. No mention of Meredith's kinetic field or Jim's gravitational pulse. Captain Delaney barely glanced at the paperwork. "Nice work. Try not to make a habit of surviving." The next night they hit the streets with purpose. Their patrols became surgical. Meredith could sense electromagnetic shifts. She knew when a weapon was drawn before it left the holster. Jim could manipulate inertia, slowing time just enough to dodge bullets or disarm suspects mid-motion. Together they were a nightmare whispered through dark alleyways and gang channels. They took down a chop shop run by cybernetically enhanced smugglers. They stopped a riot with nothing but presence and precision. They rescued a hostage from a collapsing warehouse by bending the laws of physics and never once broke protocol. But they didn't just fight crime. They studied it. Jim kept a journal, coded in Martian glyphs, tracking human behavior, escalation patterns, and emotional triggers. Meredith recorded audio logs in Venusian, analyzing empathy, authority dynamics, and the strange rituals of coffee breaks and locker room banter. They were learning, evolving, becoming more than observers. One night, after a particularly tense bust involving a rogue AI dealer and a sentient drone, they sat on the hood of their cruiser, watching the city breathe. "You ever think about telling them?" Jim asked. "Who? The Earthlings?" "Yeah," he said. Meredith shook her head. "They'd panic. Or try to weaponize us. Or promote us," she smirked. "That's worse." They laughed. It was the first time they'd let themselves feel human. From the shadows, a figure watched. Not gang, not cop, something else. The rookies were making waves, and the city wasn't the only one taking notice. Chapter 4. The Infiltration. Area 10 had always been strange, but lately it was getting strategic. Jim noticed it first, gangs coordinating across territories that had been at war for years. Meredith picked up encrypted chatter on frequencies not used by any known human tech. Surveillance drones were vanishing mid-flight. Arrested suspects were exhibiting neural anomalies, subdermal implants, flickering pupils, speech patterns that didn't match their backgrounds. Something was wrong. One night, while investigating a warehouse fire near the docks, they found it. A hidden chamber beneath the rubble, lined with alien tech. Not Martian, not Venusian. Something darker. Meredith scanned the symbols. This isn't just infiltration. It's staging. Jim nodded grimly. They're preparing for something big. Inside the chamber were files, holographic dossiers on key city officials, precinct captains, even FBI agents. The invaders weren't just observing, they were embedding, replacing. They took the evidence to Delaney, who laughed it off. "You two been watching too many sci-fi flicks. Get some sleep." But the next day, Delaney was gone. Transferred, no explanation. Jim and Meredith went rogue. They began mapping the infiltration, tracking patterns, decoding transmissions, intercepting alien operatives disguised as gang leaders, tech smugglers, even beat cops. Each arrest brought them closer to the truth. A full-scale invasion was imminent, and Earth's defenses were laughably unprepared. They coordinated with a few trusted agents in the FBI, those who hadn't been compromised. Together, they launched a sting operation that exposed the alien network and dismantled its command hub beneath the city's old power grid. The media spun it as a terrorist cell. The FBI gave Jim and Meredith their thanks. Area 10 threw a block party. But the truth was buried, deep and classified. Back in their cruiser, Meredith stared at the stars. "We stopped the invasion. For now." Jim nodded. "But we're not just observers anymore." They weren't rookies. They weren't undercover. They were something new. And the beat was just the beginning. Chapter 5. Recognition. The awards ceremony was held in a marble-clad auditorium that smelled like politics and inflated ego. Jim adjusted his tie, an Earth custom he still found mildly absurd. Meredith stood beside him in full-dress blues, her expression unreadable as ever. The FBI director took the podium, flanked by senators, media drones, and a holographic banner that read, "Valor Beyond Badges." "Officers, Henderson and Cole," the director intoned, "have demonstrated exceptional courage, tactical brilliance, and a commitment to justice that transcends jurisdiction." The crowd applauded. Flashbulbs popped. Somewhere in the back, a precinct captain muttered, "Rookies, huh?" They were given medals, commendations, offers, promotions to elite task forces, transfers to quieter districts, even a recruitment pitch from Homeland Security. Meredith declined first, her voice calm but firm. "Area 10 still needs us." Jim followed suit. "We're not done learning." Their refusal rippled through the ranks like a glitch in the system. Who turns down upward mobility? Who chooses the chaos of the worst beat in the city? But they knew the truth. Area 10 was a crucible, a living lab, the only place where human law enforcement revealed its rawest truths, its failures, its improvisations, its moments of grace. Back on patrol, they were greeted like legends. Kids waved, gang graffiti morphed into tribute art. Even the precinct coffee tasted less like despair. But beneath the celebration, something stirred. Meredith intercepted a transmission, encrypted, off-world. A recall order. Their mission was complete. Their time on Earth was ending. Jim stared at the message, then at the city skyline. "We could go home. File our reports. Let someone else take over." Meredith shook her head. "Or we could build something better." They weren't just observers anymore. They were architects. And the beat was about to go galactic. Chapter 6. The Proposal. The recall order pulsed in Meredith's comms implant like a countdown. Jim stared at the encrypted message hovering above the cruiser's dashboard. "Return to Mars." Debrief. Mission complete. Meredith's version was nearly identical. Venus's tone more formal, but no less final. They'd done what they were sent to do: observe human law enforcement, report on its strengths and failures, and return home. But the beat had changed them. Earth had changed them, and they weren't ready to leave it behind. In the station locker room, beneath flickering lights and the scent of damp Kevlar, they drafted a plan. Not a report, not a resignation, a proposal, a galactic police force, not a military, not a surveillance network, a coalition of peacekeepers trained across worlds, fluent in local justice systems, equipped to handle interplanetary threats with empathy, precision, and adaptability. A force that learned from Earth's chaos, not just judged it. They called it the Interstellar Justice Accord. The pitch was bold, radical, dangerous. They knew their superiors might reject it outright, or worse, see it as insubordination. But they also knew the truth. The invasion they'd stopped on Earth was just one node in a larger web. Other planets were vulnerable. Other systems were blind. They transmitted the proposal through secure channels, encoded in hybrid Martian-Venusian syntax. It included case files, psychological profiles, arrest logs, and a manifesto titled Justice Among Badges. Then they waited. 3 days passed, no response. On the 4th, their implants lit up. Proposal accepted. Both governments had agreed, tentatively, conditionally, but officially. The Accord would begin as a pilot program. Jim and Meredith would serve as its first commanders, tasked with recruiting, training, and deploying agents across known space. Their cruiser was retrofitted into a mobile command unit. Area 10 became their Earth liaison hub. Delaney, now reinstated, saluted them with a grin. Guess rookies aren't what they used to be. As they lifted off for their first interstellar summit, Meredith looked out at the city below. "We came here to learn," Jim nodded. "Now we teach." The beat went on, but now it echoed across the stars. Chapter 7. Commanders of the Accord. The stars didn't feel like home. Not yet. Jim and Meredith stood aboard the Centurion, the first command vessel of the newly formed Interstellar Justice Accord. It was sleek, silent, and far too clean, nothing like the cracked pavement and neon chaos of Area 10. Meredith missed the smell of burnt coffee. Jim missed the noise. Their new roles came with rank. Commanders. Their mission was to recruit, train, and deploy peacekeepers across the galaxy, agents who could navigate the cultural minefields of planetary law, adapt to local customs, and respond to threats that defied gravity, logic, and diplomacy. But first, they had to build it. Their initial recruits were a mess, a telepathic empath from the moon of Venus who cried every time someone lied, a sentient fungus from the outer rings of Mars who refused to wear a badge, a shapeshifter who kept impersonating Meredith during briefings for morale. Jim sighed. "We're building a galactic police force out of improv actors and mood spores." Meredith smirked. "Just like Area 10. They designed training modules based on Earth's model, hostage negotiation in unpredictable environments, pursuit protocols across gravity wells, de-escalation tactics for species with venomous sarcasm. They even included a course called Coffee and Authority, Navigating Human Rituals. But not everyone was on board. Some planetary leaders saw the Accord as a threat, an overreach. Others feared cultural contamination. A few demanded veto power over arrests involving their citizens. Meredith handled diplomacy with surgical precision. Jim handled resistance with quiet defiance. They made their first deployment to a mining colony on Zereth Prime, where corporate mercenaries were enslaving locals under the guise of security enforcement. The Accord intervened, non-lethally, strategically, and with full documentation. The colony was liberated. The footage went viral. Suddenly, the Accord had momentum. Back aboard the Centurion, Meredith reviewed the latest reports. "We've got requests from 6 systems, and a complaint from the Fungus Union." Jim leaned back. We're making progress. She looked at him. You ever miss the beat? He nodded. Every day. But they both knew the beat hadn't ended. It had expanded, and now it echoed across worlds. Chapter 8. Legacy. The stars moved slower now. Jim stood on the observation deck of the Centurion, watching the twin moons of Venus rise over the diplomatic summit. Delegates from 12 systems had gathered, some in robes, some in armor, one in a cloud of sentient gas, to ratify the Interstellar Justice Accord. Meredith joined him, her uniform now marked with the insignia of Commander's First Class. They signed, she said, unanimous, even the Fungus Union. Jim exhaled. We did it, but it didn't feel like victory. Not exactly. It felt like momentum, like the beat had shifted again, from survival to stewardship. Their journey had started in a broken cruiser on a cracked street. Two rookies thrown into chaos, forced to reveal truths they hadn't even admitted to themselves. Now they were architects of something bigger than any one planet, a system of justice that could adapt, evolve, and endure. They walked the halls of the Accord's new headquarters, a repurposed asteroid station orbiting a neutral star. Recruits trained in simulation chambers that mimicked Earth's alleyways, Mars's gravity wells, and Venus's empathy fields. Protocols were debated, rewritten, tested. Mistakes were made, lessons were learned. And through it all, Jim and Meredith kept patrolling. Not because they had to, because they believed in the rhythm, the pulse of justice, the beat. One night, Meredith received a transmission from Earth, Area 10. A precinct captain had quoted their tactics in a training seminar. A rookie had cited their case files in a thesis. A mural had gone up on Placer Avenue, two figures in blue, standing back to back, eyes glowing. Jim smiled. We left a mark. Meredith nodded. Now we make sure it lasts. They stood together, watching the stars blink like distant sirens. The Accord was young, fragile, but it was real. And somewhere on some forgotten street, another rookie was stepping into the arena, ready to learn, ready to fight, ready to listen. The beat goes on. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.